Franchising is the most misunderstood and most overlooked form of entrepreneurship. We're here to educate you and help you find the entrepreneur within. Franchising is not all about the French fries.
We find that individuals who are exploring business ownership tend to have a lot of misperceptions and misunderstandings about the franchise industry. So what we want to do is help prospective business owners make confident and educated decisions before moving forward or not moving forward with a business. Welcome to Unpredicted Entrepreneur.
Hi, welcome to episode 74 of Unpredicted Entrepreneur. I'm Roxanne Rapsky, and this is my colleague, Sarah Wasco. We created this podcast to bring you education and information about business ownership and really focus on franchising. And today we have a founder of a franchise called Splash and Dash Groomery, and I'm going to forget the last part of that, Dan. Boutique. So Dan Barton is here. He's the founder and CEO. And we just want to welcome you, Dan, and thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I truly appreciate that. And I love that color you're wearing. It looks like you're part of the company.
I couldn't have planned that any better. I know.
Right?
It did work out. So, Dan, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the pet business.
Well, I had started my career in the gym industry. I lived in Orlando and had owned 5 World Gym franchises. And my partner came to me at the time and said he wanted to be a stripper. And so ultimately we had to sell the gyms. And so I kind of went into semi-retirement, flipping real estate. And then World Gym Corporate called me and said, hey, we want you to come aboard at the corporate level and help us drive revenue as a CFO. And so I moved out to California, joined the corporate team. Unfortunately, after a few months, they insisted that I start wearing a tie every day to work. And that was just not something I was willing to do. And so I quit after a couple months. And then at the time I had my baby, her name was Mercedes, a 10-pound Yorkie. She was absolutely my life. And so what does someone do when they're unemployed? They buy their dog a pet store. And so that's the way it all started.
There's a little bit of story behind that you shared with us.
You share that whole story.
Yeah, you have to share the story, Dan.
Yes, okay, so Mercedes, being a Yorkie, loved to chase mice and rats. And so being the great father that I was, I would go to the local pet store in town, and on weekends I'd buy her a couple mice or buy her a rat. And if I bought her a couple mice, I'd bring the mice home and then I'd let them loose in the house. And then she would just chase those things around until eventually she caught them and snapped their neck. Or if I had the rats, which were a little bit bigger, I'd let one loose in the backyard and then she'd be chasing that around all day in the backyard. So that was something we did on a regular basis to keep her entertained, and it was fun. And so it just so happened that the same store that I was buying the mice and rats from went up for sale. And so that's how it created that opportunity. So I said, well, what a great way to buy mice and rats at a wholesale price if we own the store. And at the same time, my dog would have her own spot. And so that's how it started.
I love this. So you went from owning gyms in Florida, and your business partner decides he wants to be a stripper. So you sold the gyms, split the profits, decided to move to California because you were recruited by
World
Gym to work for their corporate, right? And interviewed. I remember you told us you interviewed in like shorts and flip flops, and they hired you. And then 6 months later, they made you wear a tie. So that was kind of ironic.
That was odd.
So yeah, you left. You sold your franchises and then worked for corporate, and then evolved into buying a pet store so you could get mice and rats at a discount. So that's obviously not Splash and Dash. So I'm sorry. I just thought it was still worthy of repeating because it was funny.
It's hard to make this stuff up.
It is hard to make this stuff up.
I'm waiting for Netflix to call me.
We knew you had an interesting story when we invited you to be on, but we didn't know it was quite this interesting. So tell us a little bit more about how you evolved from now owning this store to becoming Splash and Dash franchise.
So when we got in the operations, I was working behind the front desk, trying to learn everything I could. And so another funny story, a customer came in and, I'm at the front desk, not really knowing too much. And I said to the customer, what can I help you with? She said that she wanted 50 crickets. And I was like, 50 crickets. I'm like, okay, I'll be right back. So I run to the back. I asked the team, I said, hey, there's a lady up here that wants crickets. Do we carry crickets? And they said, yes. And so they had this big, box in the back. You'd have to lift up the top and then you would individually pick out 50 crickets.
Yeah, no. That's not happening. Sorry.
How do you keep them from escaping and jumping all over the store? That's your profits, running across the store.
Yeah, these little crickets. Yeah. So anyway, that was kind of crazy. And I remember pulling out those 50 thinking to myself, hell no, we're getting rid of this as quickly as possible. So anyway, I was working there trying to learn as much as I could. I'm a big numbers guy. And so ran into continual cash flow problems. And the cash flow problems being that I was in California, one of the big things being in the actual desert, when it rained, everybody went into a panic and they would not leave their house. And so things like that would have an impact on the cash flow, right? Customers coming into the store on a daily basis. Then you would have appointments set and then people would cancel. So that would impact your cash flow again. And so I just found it very, very challenging to pay the bills on time and to be able to predict cash flow. Unlike when I was in the gym business, typically in the gym business, all of the membership revenue comes in at the beginning of the month. And so you get that big lump sum of money, you're able to pay all your bills. And then throughout the rest of the month, basically everything you make is profit. And so coming into retail, it was a very different experience and it was very challenging for me. So, I would go home every day stressed out and I'd hop in the pool because it was 110 in the desert, hop in the pool and drink a beer, and did that several weeks over and over again. And eventually it just occurred to me, I don't know how many beers it was, but it eventually occurred to me that I just need to do what I know how to do best. And what I knew how to do best was memberships. And so that was the epiphany that I had the very next day. Without any membership agreements, without having any idea what I was going to do, I just started talking to customers. And each customer that came in said, oh my God, I love the idea. Let me know when it's ready. And I said, oh, by the way, it's ready. Just and I'd pull out a little index card. I'd write their name, the amount I quoted them, and wrote down their credit card. And that's basically how we started. And so the first goal I had set for myself was, let's sell enough membership that I could cover the electric bill. And so we quickly hit that like in 2 days. Then I was like, okay, well, next goal, let's get enough memberships sold that I can cover the rent. Well, that happened I think it was about 10 days later. And so I just kept setting these goals. And within literally 90 days, we had a membership base of over 20,000 a month. The customers just absolutely went wild for it.
Wow.
And so that was the pivotal point for the company at the time. It solved all of our cash flow problems. We became instantly profitable. And then we had all of these additional benefits from the members, right? So now the members are coming in 2 to 3 times a month because the membership allowed them to get their dog washed and bathed, unlimited number of times throughout the month. So they'd come in 2, 3, 4 times a month to drop the dog off to be washed. And then when they came back to pick up the dog, guess what? They would buy a cookie or they would buy a bag of dog food. So there were all these other things that started to happen that they were unintended, but it was a benefit, right? Because now we've got the customer spending more in the store per month than they did originally when they would just come in for a one time a month kind of bath. So it was huge. Super excited about it. At the time, I had thought about franchising. This was in 2009, just after the market had crashed. And I was not able to get the trademark on the name of the pet store, Hollywood Premier Pet. And so I had to come up with a new name, came up with the name Splash and Dash at that point in time, was able to get the trademark. And then because of the economy, when I reached out to several franchise brokers on the side of helping a brand launch, they said, look, it's just impossible right now because of the economy. Why don't you offer a licensing concept? And so that's what we did. We offered a licensing concept to the local mom and pop stores where they could offer the membership service in addition to all of their other services that they had. So it was XYZ mom and pop offering Splash and Dash the membership. And so we built software so that the licensed locations could check people in and out, just like like you would have at a gym. And it was super successful. And then each one just became more and more successful. We actually grew to 54 licensed locations and expanded into Australia and had 3 locations in Australia. And so everything was going great. Everybody's making money. I had moved back to Florida at that point in time and sold the original pet store and was working with all of these independent mom and pops. And so, God, I'm talking a lot, I feel like.
It's a good story. Good. Yeah.
So because the independents were having such great success with the membership, they naturally reached out to me and said, hey, Dan, can you help me with my grooming department? Can you help me with my retail? Can you help me with this? And so we got into being these consultants helping independent mom and pop stores. And me being a numbers guy, I would always ask them, well, I need to look at your books first so that I can help determine where the problem is and then come up with solutions. And in many cases, none of them had books. And so I would spend countless hours recreating their accounting system in QuickBooks so that we could produce a P&L statement. And so
wait, let me stop you there really quick. Time out. Didn't you say some of these owners came to you just like with boxes with receipts in them?
Yeah, they had nothing. They didn't have a spreadsheet. I mean, some had a spreadsheet. I mean, that was a basic, but many of them just kept all the receipts in a box and their checkbook, and that was it.
Wow.
The same, they would do the same thing at the end of the year with their accountant. So it was crazy that they did not have instant access to their numbers. So so I had to recreate all that. And so we became this consultant helping everybody. But the challenge was, as a consultant, I had to be nice. I had to not swear. I had to protect their feelings. I had to think twice about what I was saying. And at the end of the day, I suck at that, right? I'm not good at that. And so needless to say, the F-bomb would drop once in a while and my Spanish would come out. And what ended up happening was I would make these mom and pops cry. And that's when I realized I was more of a coach, right? It's all about winning. It's all about making money. The numbers don't lie. I'm not here to protect your feelings. I'm not here to, drink a beer with you. I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to help you make money. And it just became very challenging, that relationship, because of my personality. And so in 2014, I had another epiphany that everything that I was doing for these mom and pops, from doing their bookkeeping to helping them determine pricing, controlling their inventory, helping them with memberships, helping them run the business, helping them train their management team, helping them train their salespeople, it occurred to me that I was basically operating as a franchisor, right? I had everything that these mom and pops needed to be successful. And that was the moment that I said, okay, now's the time I need to become a franchisor, build the Splash and Dash brand with all of our processes and systems that had been proven to work, with all these independent mom and pops. I knew that if I could make all of my systems and processes work with independent mom and pops that were fighting me every day, imagine what it would look like if I built the software around our total workflow and everybody was following the same systems and processes. And so I spent all of 2014 working through the model and how it all worked. We really beefed up the software. And then in 2015, we launched the brand as a franchise.
Wow. It's just such an amazing story of how you got to where you are today. The licensees, did they become franchisees, or how did all that work?
Yep. So they were on various contracts between 5 and 10 years. And they did start becoming franchisors, right? Or franchisees. They switched over, put the Splash and Dash name on the front of the building. However, what we found happened was that the mindset of a independent mom and pop is not the same mindset as a franchisee. And so even though they believed in everything we were doing, they were not a huge success in switching over to being a franchisee because they had called the shots their way for so long. It was very, very challenging for them to now go into a system where they had to follow everything to the T. There was no longer any flexibility. It all had to be done step by step. And so several of them found it very difficult. We released them from their agreements, and then they switched back to mom and pop. We still have one to this day out of Capel, Texas. She's one of our top franchisees. She's been grooming since she was 16 years old.
Wow.
Had been an independent mom and pop for over 15 years, and then switched to a franchise. And she was the right mindset. She understood that it was always easier and more effective to work with a proven process than to try to recreate the wheel or constantly be tweaking things. And so she found it awesome because now she didn't have to work as hard, right? Because as long as she got her team to follow the processes and the systems, then she was going to generate revenue. Where prior to being a franchisee, she was always trying to improve her own processes. She didn't have support. It was just her. And, she had to watch everything. She had to constantly be creative. And, what should I do for a marketing plan this month? What should I do next month? And so she just worked a lot as an independent versus us giving her everything that she needs, and she just has to execute. So she was able to stay aboard and become one of our top. She's in the top 5 in the network to this day.
Wow. Great story.
And she's right here in DFW. That's awesome.
Well,
right there in Capel.
Yeah.
You said something when we were doing our prep call that I wanted to point out. And you, when you were talking about the numbers, you live by the numbers. You said that these owners wanted to be business owners. They told everyone they were business owners, but they didn't operate as business owners. And that they operated from emotion, personal bias, and treated employees as friends. So, and I think, some of your frustration was around that too. But I thought that was a really interesting point because I think of a lot of, observation. Thank you. I think a lot of independents that just kind of march to the beat of their own drum might suffer from that. And, we always say that franchising isn't the best fit for everybody, right? Because if you really have to be willing to believe in the system, first of all, and then be willing to follow it, or why even spend the money to join if you're not going to follow the process, especially from someone that has obviously put as much thought into it as you have. So, and that also leads me into, what makes your franchise different? Talk about some of the rest of those systems that you've built and why it makes it so much easier to run a business.
Well, we have invested heavily in software. So we have a proprietary software system. And basically the software that we have runs the day-to-day operations of your store. It's built on an AI platform, so it's constantly analyzing your business. So for example, when a franchise owner sits down to do the schedule for the month, the AI will then look over what you did. And if it sees an area that it thinks that for whatever reason you could schedule or you could reschedule employees on that particular day to have a better profit margin or be more efficient with payroll dollars, it will alert you of that. and then it will point out all of its recommendations of why what you did isn't your best and why you should do it the way the software is telling you. So it is pretty interactive in that sense. It's constantly watching the business, and it can process everything much faster than you can possibly do as a human. Another example of how it works is it's tracking every employee. And so when you think about an employee bathing a dog, they may be bathing a Yorkie. And we have said as the franchisor, when you bathe a Yorkie, it should take you 15 minutes. And then if you're grooming, we'll say a golden doodle, we'll say, okay, bathing a golden doodle is going to take you 20 minutes. Well, the system, the AI is watching this employee and watching if they're hitting that number on, 15 minutes or less. If they go over, then the system's looking at that and saying, okay, now that employee has gone over by 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes, that is decreasing the profitability. And then you could have the same employee who then does the golden doodle, and instead of getting it done in 20 minutes, maybe he gets it done in 18 minutes. So in the case of a golden doodle, he's faster, but in the case of a Yorkie, he's slower. And so the system will track that over time. And once it begins to see that there's a pattern, that this particular employee is consistently slower when it comes to bathing a Yorkie versus a golden doodle, once it recognizes that pattern, then going forward, it will never assign a Yorkie to him or her because he's slower. It'll assign it to another employee who is either faster or on task. That way, we're constantly making sure that on a daily basis, and even by particular breed of dog and employee, we're maximizing the efficiency rates on every single dog, which in turn increases profit. And so there's just not anything, any out of the box software is not going to do that. It just doesn't exist. But that really is what makes us so different. Yeah, because even if you had a general manager that you're paying $100,000 a year, there's no way they're going to be able to figure that out in real time and then quickly pivot, right? It just doesn't happen. So the software pretty much is this high level general manager that is constantly analyzing the business and telling you what to do. At the moment, we're working on putting the software on complete autopilot.
Wow.
And so that because what we find happens when we look at the numbers for shops that maybe are not being as profitable as other shops, when we go through the numbers and we track every keystroke that everybody makes, the biggest difference is the franchise owner is in the system making changes, right? And now after reaching all this, we've realized that it's our franchise owners thinking they're smarter than the software,
the AI.
or they're smarter. So they go in and they tweak things. And the reality is they just make it worse.
Yeah.
And so we're working, our next round of development is to put the software on total autopilot. It would automatically do the scheduling. It would just do everything so that the franchise owner doesn't have to, or the manager on staff doesn't have to.
Talk to us about the, and thank you for sharing that, by the way. That is really, really, I can't imagine. I wouldn't be able to figure that out. I know that. That's wild.
It's the technology piece of that is incredible. And I was just thinking about, some people, like you said, going in and tweaking it and thinking that they can outsmart it. But at the end of the day, it's all about their efficiency and getting, like you said, the right groomer on the right animal to make things flow like it should flow and help everybody be more successful.
Well, and as a business owner, you can't stand over your employees with a timer.
No, you can't.
Right.
I mean, it's just not going to, that's not going to be good for you morale at all.
And it's because of that software. That's, when I have spoke in the industry, the typical mom and pop is going to groom somewhere between 10 and 15 dogs a day. Some of the bigger shops are going to, potentially push 20, but that's pretty much the average, right? And you can talk to any mom and pop, any groomer out there. And if you said, hey, what's the average your shop does? They're going to say somewhere between 10 and 20 per day. That is just the way it's been forever. Our locations, we average anywhere from 70 to 100 dogs a day.
Oh my goodness.
It's very, very different, right? And the only reason we can do that is because of the software.
Well, don't you also like save the grooming part for the groomer, and you have other people do like the bathing and the toenail clipping and the toothbrushing, because the groomer is also a higher paid employee, but it's almost
Correct.
like an assembly line, right? So doesn't that also make it more efficient?
It does, because what we're allowed to do is we're teaching different people how to be super good at a small part of the process. So in our case, yes, there is, anywhere from 4 to 6 people that all interact with that dog doing one of the tasks or a couple of the tasks, where in a typical mom and pop, there's typically just one person handling the dog from start to finish.
Right.
And that's fine. But in that example earlier, when you have an employee who loves golden doodles for whatever reason and is faster, well, then that's what you want that employee to do, right? You want him to focus on what he loves and he's really good at. And when we find out he's not good with Yorkies, and again, it could be a simple case that maybe he was bit once by a Yorkie.
Yeah.
And so he's just a little skittish working with a Yorkie. But that slows things down. So I wouldn't want to keep putting him in a position to be slow. If he's great at golden doodles, then let's have him focus on golden doodles. And then it's a win-win for everybody. He's happier. We're making more money. It goes much faster.
So some of the other things you do for your franchisees, payroll, accounting, there's some other things, right?
Yeah, we do all of the bookkeeping for them, because I learned from the licensees that bookkeeping is a huge function of running a business, but it's a function that 99% of business owners don't like. So we have automated the whole system. My corporate team takes care of it for you. We give you all the reports that you need on a regular basis, reconcile your bank statements, track cash, track everything for you. We also have an internal marketing team. And so we're constantly developing quarterly marketing plans and then all the assets that go with it. And then also, if there's local events happening at your store, then the marketing team will help create whatever assets that you need, whether it's print or flyers, whatever you need to make the event successful. The team is there to help you, doing all that. We also have business coaches. And so they're going to meet with you multiple times throughout the month in coaching calls. They're analyzing your business. And then they're going to report back to you and say, hey, did you notice this? I think there's room for improvement here. And here's the 10, 15 different things that we recommend that you do to get that number up or change whatever pattern's happening. You can imagine if our software is capable of determining or tracking every employee down to the second at the shop level, you can only imagine what kind of technology we have tracking all of the stores at the corporate level and everything that they do. So we can flag, or we see flags happen all the time, way before a shop owner does. And we try to, consult with the franchise owner to get them ahead before it ends up being a bigger problem than necessary.
Well, and that leads me to what drives you. What drives you to do all this and provide all of this to your franchisees?
Well, I'm absolutely passionate about the pet space because of Mercedes and Bugatti. I love technology, and what I have built, I absolutely love coming to work every day. And I think that that's the core difference, right? Is I love it. I love working with our franchise owners. I love the creativity that they come up with. I love the daily challenges, and looking at those challenges and then coming up with a technology solution for them versus just saying, oh, well, let's hire somebody or let's get a different person. I like the challenge of how do we solve this through technology? And fortunately, we have all of our own coders right here at the corporate office. So that makes it much easier than having to work with a third party or a separate company, where you're just a number. These guys can pivot and move pretty quickly. So
And streamlining all those processes, all that technology helps your franchisees be more successful. They make more money. And then in turn, you make more money. So everybody, it's a win-win for everyone.
Win-win.
Yeah, that's what's great about franchising, right? It truly is a yin and yang relationship. If the franchisee is not making money, then the franchisor is not making money either.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
Everybody's aligned with the same goal.
Yep. And such a testament to the value of being in a franchise versus trying to figure it out yourself. I mean, having all of those resources. How large is your staff there at headquarters?
So we currently have, since we last talked the other day, we hired 2 more people. So
wow.
It's crazy. We're at 19. And so you hear me joke all the time that that's 18 too many.
Yes.
But having a team like that at the corporate office for the size that we are is a true testament to the high touch that we are with our franchisees. Where if you look at some other brands that have, 20 locations and maybe 15, 20 in development, they have a corporate team of maybe 4 or 5 people. And so, and again, because they're outsourcing a lot of things, so they don't need that many at corporate. But here, we are intimately involved with the franchisees on so many levels. And so the net result of that is having a large team to be able to support everybody, on a regular basis.
That's amazing. So one last question for you before we go. Time has gone quickly here. If you had any tip or piece of advice to share, maybe somebody's thinking about going into business for, business ownership, maybe considering franchising, what would be a piece of advice that you might give somebody that is in that situation? Listen to this podcast thinking they might want to own a business.
So my firm belief would be that you have to do the soul searching and go through maybe the last 10 years and figure out how many times did you follow a plan versus how many times did you try to reinvent the wheel. And if you find yourself in a scenario where over the past 5-10 years that you've always been very good at following plans or executing on a plan, then I think you're going to be a great fit for a franchise. But if you find yourself always trying to be creative, starting new projects, not listening to other people, not reading the blueprints, or a great example would be if you're the type of person who buys something from IKEA and you don't read the instruction manual, you just start putting it together, you're probably not a good fit for a franchise, because a franchise, it's all about following the processes that are already in place, not reinventing the wheel. So, before you make a big investment, I think it's important to really do that soul searching to make sure that you understand what side you're going to fall on.
Yeah.
And if you fall on the side of, you don't read the instructions, you like to do it on your own, that kind of thing, well, then certainly, if you still want to be in franchising, then you'd have to look for a brand that really allows you to do all of that.
Yeah.
And the trade-off is probably going to be a brand that doesn't give you really any support, right? They're going to give you maybe a name and a couple small guidelines and then let you figure it out. But somebody like Splash and Dash, there's no figuring anything out. You just got to follow the process and the results will happen.
Maybe that's a licensing opportunity for those that want to not follow the manual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, wonderful. Tell us, if anybody wanted to learn more about Splash and Dash, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, I think working with a broker and working with a network like FranNet, where you're dealing with the best of the best, and perfect examples right here. We're talking to Sarah and Roxanne, right? The best of the best at FranNet. I think that that's where everybody should start, because what Sarah and Roxanne type of individual brings to the table and the knowledge that they have to help somebody is just invaluable.
Well, thank you for that endorsement. We appreciate it. We know how busy you are, and we are very grateful for you taking this time to join us today on Unpredicted Entrepreneur. Again, I am Sarah Waskow. It's Waskow, joined by my colleague Roxanne Rapske, Rapske. Please look us up on LinkedIn. We're very active there. Hopefully, we can bring value there to you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is FranNet of Dallas, Fort Worth, and Oklahoma. And you can hear Unpredicted Entrepreneur on any of the podcast platforms. So please subscribe there as well. And thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.
Bye.